this is actually not adhered. I could separate this if I so desired. Hey everybody, Gil here at Sailing Vessel Dream Chaser. I'm going to mix a slightly higher ratio of catalyst. In cooler temperatures you can mix up to twice as much. So for 1 pint of resin it calls for 4 cc's. I'm going to use about 6.5 cc's for that same amount of resin, and the thought is it'll harden a little bit faster. It'll give me a shorter working period, but quite frankly this is a test and I want to see if it's working, and by doing this first thing this morning, when I finish work today, I should be able to come back and see how well it's starting to work. Working time for this is about 20 to 25 minutes. So by this afternoon I should start to see it hardened. It wouldn't be fully cured, but it should be good and hardened. So away we go. And hey, like I said, I post this stuff up, success or failure, and I want to show you what this looks like. If you have a mixture and you don't have it right, I want you to kind of know what it looks like. It was really interesting to me. The first day I did this, I waited 24 hours and I thought, oh, it's the first time I'm using it. Maybe it just isn't setting up that way. No, I came back the next day, it was still this way. Clearly there's an error. So here we go. All right, and as I said, this really didn't set up, and I'll show you what I mean by that. I mean, I can literally pull this up, which clearly indicates that it was not set up. And you can see it just didn't harden. So I'm going to pull this up, and then I'm going to use acetone to essentially clean the surface. But you know, clearly this is not the way this should work. So I had a problem. I think this definitely shows that my experiment failed, but I think frankly I failed my experiment more than the products in any way failing. A boat's supposed to be rigid, not this way. So now that I cleared off the old woven woving that wasn't hardened, I'm now going to go ahead and put on some real nitrile gloves here, because I don't want to risk the gloves melting when I put acetone on it. That wouldn't feel too good. So I'm going to clean this whole surface up with acetone, clean out my mixing jar. We're going to mix us up a new batch, and we're going to get this layer put back down again. So what I've done now is I've cleaned this entire surface. I've got it just sit in the sun for a minute. Acetone, like paint thin or anything else, it evaporates and dries very, very quickly, but just to be sure, I went ahead and put it in the sun there. I'm just pressing it down so it actually gets kind of stuck into the resin that's on the surface there. Now that we've got this all rolled out with the fin roller, we'll be back in just a minute and we'll see how it's setting up. Now we're back over here at the storage shed. It's been about 26 or 27 hours since we rolled that fiberglass out. We're gonna go ahead and see what we have. I can still smell it. It smells rather pungent from right here, but let's see what we got. So as y'all are well aware, I've been doing this test about 26 hours. It's still a little bit tacky, but it's significantly harder than it was the last time I did this. So I believe this just needs to set up a little further, but I can't resist the temptation of giving a little pull, so let's see what we have here. I'll zoom it in so you can check it out. Yeah, I can lift that a little bit. I'm frankly concerned. This has been 26 or so hours. I get that it may not be fully cured, but to me it ought to be at least adhered. It's worrisome, and enough to the point where I'm gonna let it go another 24 hours. Unfortunately for me, that sort of kills the fiberglass project for this weekend, which I was really hoping to do. But I have to assume there's not a problem with the resin. It's got to be something I'm doing wrong. Got to do a little bit more research. I'll try and contact the manufacturer and see what's going on. It's not quite making sense to me, so let's see what we find. You can see I can pull this mat right up, so it's never completely hardened, and clearly that's not the way this is supposed to work. A few weeks ago we did a fiberglass test, and if you remember, it never did set up, and I believe it was because the temperature was a little bit too cold. I was worried I had the mixture wrong. I tried it several different times, it never worked, but I do believe the issue was it was only about 70 degrees. A couple of times it got up to about 73, but I put it back in the storage shed in the shade in a cool area to dry, and it just didn't. It never set up good. So today it's about 85 degrees. Yesterday I did a small mixture and I just let it sit there and see if it would catalyze, and it did. So now we're going to go ahead and redo this test Let's hope this one works better, because if not, I think we're going to make the investment of doing a whole deck in epoxy, which is a lot more expensive, and I'd rather not do that, but I'm losing confidence in my ability to use the polyester resin. So here we go. Yesterday I wanted to do a quick test. The weather got good enough to try it. So instead of using my normal cans that I mixed the polyester resin in, I went ahead and used one of these red Solo cups. I cut one short, and I was dipping in the resin and pouring it in here. And I kind of set it here. I added the catalyst, I set it down, and I went to go get something to stir it with. And when I came back, it was flowing all over my test piece. Kind of looks like a crime scene, for crying out loud. And these things are goopy messy. Even the bases of them there. That's the bottom of the red Solo cup. The strange thing about this, though, is I've used these a bunch of times before when I've mixed up the West epoxy for small work I was doing. So clearly the polyester resin in the MEKP has an issue. So I believe that MEKP catalyst probably is what did this. Very interesting though. With the two previous failed tests, I needed to go ahead and cut a new section here. So I just took another old piece of the deck, cut off a section of it, and then just like in other videos, I used the 36 grit cup wheel grinder to grind the two surfaces again, much like we did in previous tests. So if you haven't watched those videos, you might want to go back and check those out. This is the time when I forget that Deb's with me, and I don't know if she knows I'm using one of our old bath mats as something to protect my $30 table. But I am. This is 1.6 ounce cross-strand mat. I'm not a huge fan of it because it's a little bit rigid, but I'm going to go ahead and do this like I've seen other people recommend. They recommend going matte, cross-strand mat, then woven, and then cross-strand mat. So that's exactly what I'm going to do in this, and we'll see how that works. I've done this thing before. I love these paint pourers. You can get them at the hardware stores. They snap right on a gallon of paint. And so this essentially calls for 1 cc of resin, or 1 cc of MEKP hardener per 4 ounces. But you can go up to twice that much. So essentially, I'm going to do, for my 6 ounces, that'd be 1.5 cc's. I'm going to go ahead and do about 3 1/4. Like all the other tests we've done, I started this process by putting the first coat down of catalyzed resin. I just used a 3-inch wide brush and painted a thin coat down on it. Not very thick and not as thin as you might put paint on a wall in a house. Just enough to get the surface wet so that when I put the next layer of chop strand down, it has something to stick into a little bit. I had heard previously that chop strand mat works better to blend in with an existing surface if you tear it by hand rather than using scissors or a knife and have that sort of solid straight edge. I'm now just laying the cross-strand mat down onto the wetted surface, and just use my fingers to push it down a little bit. And I'll now go ahead and repeat this on the second test area as well. And as the mat is laid down, now it's just a matter of taking the brush and applying some additional catalyzed resin to the top of it. And you'll notice I'm actually using a dabbing motion here rather than a brushing motion. Sorry for the jumping around piece of material here. It wasn't a very even surface. But the purpose here is to get the entire surface wet, and you can tell that the material is wet when it goes from that white to that translucent color you're seeing here. So once that surface is wet, it's now time to use the fin roller. And the purpose of the fin roller is to remove any air bubbles. So you'll notice I'm starting in the middle of the material and I'm working my way toward the edges. I definitely don't want to rub back and forth very quickly. That's not the purpose here. We're not rolling dough. We're just gently taking the edges and adhering them down to the surface. So you'll notice again, I'm starting in the middle. I kind of work my way toward the edges, and I'm looking down at it and watching the resin squeeze out of it too, because I don't want a lot of resin in there. I want it to be fairly equal in weight. And if you do see a spot that's a little bit light or it's not turning translucent, you just add a little bit of additional resin to it and then run the fin roller over it one more time. So with those two down, I'm now putting the woven roving down, or roving woven. I keep saying it backwards. I have the first piece down. I'm just laying the second piece in, and just like I did before, I'm gently pushing down with my fingers, just enough to get it seated into the surface, and then I will use a dabbing motion of the resin on top of this. And obviously it takes more resin for this thicker material here. just a matter of repeating the process here, dabbing the resin down into this. Obviously it takes a little bit more. And if I go ahead and push this into a real close-up shot here, I slowly move the fin roller across it. I don't know if you can see it here, but you start to see the material completely adhere down and kind of stick to the surface. And then as I'm moving this way, areas where it was a little bit white starts to turn translucent just by doing this. I mean, think of it like squeezing out a sponge or a squeegee. So it makes a big difference, and it works really well with the fin roller. And now the one last move I'm going to do is add another layer of the cross-strand mat. You might have heard me mention earlier in the video, what I'm wanting to do is something I've heard a lot of others say is the best sort of method for doing this. You put a layer of cross-strand mat down directly on your surface, then you do a layer of the woven, whatever it is, and then you finish it with another layer of the cross-strand mat on top of it, and then obviously you finish it out with a fairing or whatever you're going to do. But that sort of woven in the, between the sandwich of this works really well. So that's what I'm doing in my test. And as you see, the finish is the way we've done before. I use the brush to dab the resin down onto the material, saturate it, and then use the fin roller to smooth out any air bubbles. So at this point, we are looking pretty good here with our 3 different layers and bubbles removed. Alright, so I let this sit now for several hours. The good news is, with 85 degrees or so sitting outside, this hardened up really well. I'm going to let it sit for 24 hours, but you can really see this looks good. Definitely hardened up. This is the side that was ground directly down to fiberglass. This is the side that is just over. This is what the deck looked like when I pull up the teak. I basically just got it a little bit smooth here and then right down the glass here. What I'm ultimately going to do is I'm going to end up breaking this and seeing how well this adheres. But I believe this is likely what I'm going to do over the entire deck. It's one layer of cross-strand mat. It's a layer of 26-ounce woven roving, or woven. I get that backwards all the time. And then it's another layer of cross-strand mat on top of it. So I'm looking forward to this destructive test. You guys have seen me do a lot of different testing here. We did epoxy tests. This is actually my 3rd polyester resin test. So this one is looking much better. Whether it's ultimately the decision I'll make or not is yet to be seen. But the reality is my test is solid, and I will absolutely have answers based on this test. So I'm excited. What this really means is we're going to start putting glass down on the deck very soon, and I'll know whether it should be polyester resin or epoxy resin. In next week's video, one of 2 things are going to happen. Either I'm going to actually do my destructive test, or what I might do is I might put one more layer of cross-strand mat down with polyester resin and wax at it, which would take away the tackiness of this. This is not actually too tacky, but this is what they call layup resin. It just no wax in it, which means it can be a little bit tacky, so the next layer hits it and sticks on it really well. I'm considering putting that wax layer on it and then maybe even doing a polyester resin thickened with micro balloons and then sanding it smooth to ferret, just to see how well it'll look, since that's ultimately what the end of the deck will look like. The good news is that would give me a chance to try it out, and then I still get to destroy it. So that's a good thing. When I destroy it, I'll know which one I'm ultimately going to do.
Can I feel it?
Yeah, go ahead and stop it. Or, oh,
Don't.
Okay, you want to do it on tape?
Yeah, it's going to be like an interview now.
All right. So Squidward wanted to feel this here.
Welcome to interviewing.
Yo.
Name. Or selling Vessel Dream Chaser. I am Mangle. I'm not that good of a YouTuber. I only have 12 subs. True.
Subs would be subscribers, and I guess when you're 11, you call them subs.
Well, I started this when I was 10, so.
You're an old timer at this point, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been on YouTube for a year. So, why are you doing this?
So, you know how we have the leaks in the deck where the screw holes went, right?
Yes, definitely my room.
Yeah.
We just did a little bend, but it still does leak.
Right. So the reason I'm doing this is because I'm testing, this is what the deck looks like, and ultimately I'm doing a test to see if I were to put the material down like this, would that prevent, well, one, would it prevent the leaks, but 2, is it going to stick well to this, right? What I don't want to do is put all this stuff down and then have this stuff peel right off. And give it a good tug.
Okay.
Strong, right?
I can peel it off.
And we'll wait until tomorrow when we break this stuff off. But that's the reason I'm doing it. So I'm testing how I need to prepare the surface. This is what a boat looked like. I sanded it smooth like this, right? That's what it is now. The deck all kind of looks like this.
But it's white. Why is it white?
Why is it white?
Yeah, the deck.
Well, this stuff here is little pieces of the old caulking and things that the wood was glued down with. So I sanded that smooth like this, or relatively smooth. That's what this section is. And then this section here, you see how it's brownish?
Yeah.
That, I ground it all the way down to just bare fiberglass. So this stuff underneath.
Question 3. Will it harm the boat if you just ground it to fiberglass?
No, it won't hurt it. It's just a lot of extra work. I mean, a lot of work. Like right now, this is relatively smooth, and if this sticks on it well, it would probably save us maybe 70 or 80 hours of work, and our neighbors will hate us less, because if we grind that much on the boat, it's loud.
All I know is loud.
It's loud when you're down below and I'm doing it, isn't it?
Plus it's like right over my room.
It was, part of it.
It's right over my interviewing room. Interviewing.
Did you have other questions? Oh, you asked if it would harm the boat.
Yeah, we just answered that.
Oh, you meant grinding it down to fiberglass?
Yeah.
No, it won't harm it. It wouldn't harm it as long as we put something back over it. We couldn't leave it that way.
But if it did prevent leaks, could you move that giant white thing over my head, please? So then,
You don't like that thing?
no. I mean, it probably has like a water, a lot of water on top of it. I'm scared to pull it down.
Well, it's at an
I did it once before.
It's at an angle. It's just there to deflect it. What she's referring to is right above her bunk in the double berth, there is a dorade vent. And when we've been doing the deck, we pulled the dorade vent off.
Hold on. And we will show a picture of it. You can edit it in there.
There, I have a producer. So there's a dorade vent. In her stateroom, right above her double bunk, there is a dorade vent. And while we've been working on the deck, we pulled the dorade vent off. I took just a piece of starboard with some butyl tape and just kind of stuck it down on there to stop most of the water, but it doesn't stop at all. So when we get a heavy rain, what ends up happening is the water hits the deck, it runs down the deck to the rake of the deck, and it kind of drips in around that. And down in her room, what I ended up doing was taking a big piece of plastic from like a Tupperware bin, and I essentially screwed it to the ceiling, so it just angles it down so that if it does drip, it essentially drips down on the floor instead of over her bunk.
Well, you also made like a circle, like probably out of fiberglass, and you put that on the roof. Stop some of the leaks. Like that did stop the main leaks, but there's still like tiny holes that still need to be fixed.
Yeah, apparently there's 2 screw holes where, so down below there was a piece of wood that was epoxied up to the ceiling, and that's what, you know that big bronze tube that sticks up here? That's what was holding that in place. And from the top, when I repaired the deck on the top, I didn't realize somebody down below had left holes in them. So that it looks like the guy took a drill and he drilled right up from the bottom all the way through the deck and then up sticking out of the deck.
How do you know this boat owner, the Formosa Dream Chaser boat owner, was a boy?
Well, we met the guy that bought it before us. And then we also have the paperwork that shows the names.
I'm just making sure you're not assuming genders again. Because my friends love to do that.
The previous owner we met before, the guy's name is John Secker. He lives right in Springs. I can show you where his house is, because we drive by there sometimes when we're going to Beach Springs. But we met him and he was really nice. He told us all the work he had done on the boat. He was doing a ton of it, but his health got to the point where he couldn't necessarily be out on the boat by himself anymore. So he ended up having to sell it. He didn't want to. He loved that boat. And he did a lot of work. The guy had like a big metal shop behind his house. So like, you know the cockpit, how it's got the white floor? You know, you step down into the cockpit? Where the steering wheel is.
Yeah.
So on that cockpit floor, he pulled all that up. He put new wood down, new fiberglass. He actually put aluminum down and then refiberglassed that inside of it to give it extra support.
Wow.
But yeah, he was a nice guy. And then
Can we meet him?
maybe we can go see him one day. So
Are you good friends with him?
No, I'm not good friends with him. I just met him when we bought the boat from him. And when the day we went and met him, the guy that he bought the boat from came over. So we met both him and the owner before him. You want to know what he told us about the boat?
What?
Somebody passed away on it.
I knew it. Is that why my door sometimes opens whenever I have like a really weird dream?
Your door sometimes opens because we live on a boat and it rocks in the water, so it doesn't really stay where it is.
Sometimes when it rocks, like my door is kind of hard to shut.
I've been stomping my foot like a cow with a fly on his leg out here from the mosquitoes. Let's end it, Squidward.
All right, there probably will be a part 2. Do you want a part 2?
There will be another part.
Yeah, but not during the night, because me and him. Okay, the camera has opposite directions. I'm raising up my left hand, and it looks like my right hand. But where'd you go? The guy walking into frame.
Sorry, I was throwing some stuff away.
So yeah, there's probably gonna be a part 2 during the day. Me and this random guy.
Part 2 next week will be the destruction of Vest.
I get to destroy it. Yay.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching, and please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or even Tumblr. Please take a moment and go over to our website at svdreamchaser.com to download free resources for cruising and how-to projects. Get your thumbs and mouses ready. We also have a couple of links right on the screen for some other playlists and videos that we think you'll enjoy. Thanks for watching, fellow dreamers.